Hi everyone, Kate here for my Victober wrap-up. I must say, this year was the saddest I've been for Victober to end. Just between all of the videos that were posted by everyone and doing the vlogging, the book baths, which that's just a Saturday thing now. It's a Saturday ritual. And it was just so much fun seeing what everyone was reading and getting up to. But let us not let a whole year go by before we pick up more Victorian literature. So if you are interested in me hosting any read-alongs of specific Victorian classics, please comment down below because I have been contemplating doing that more often, but I don't really know what people would be interested in. So comment down below if it's a book that I'm interested in either rereading or reading for the first time. I may very well host a read-along, and yes, we'll see. We'll see what we want to do. And I will, again, this year I'm going to wrap up the books from least favorite to most favorite. And the first one I want to talk about, I am sorry if this is kind of redundant for those of you who have heard me talk about these in the reading vlogs, but I figure there are some people who just aren't interested in reading vlogs. So if they if they didn't want to watch those, they can see me talk about it here. Or if we are just booktube besties and you want to watch me wrap up here, then great. So without further ado, the least favorites, unfortunately, were Oscar Wilde's plays. But not for like an obvious reason, not like I just thought they were poorly written or I was bored, nothing like that. I was very amused and engaged with these. I read A Woman of No Importance, one of the group read-alongs, and I read The Importance of Being Earnest, another group read-along, and then I read Lady Windermere's Fan and An Ideal Husband. And my basic issue with these is that the cynicism, but in the form of a humorous play, made me really sad. It was very off-putting to me, and I kind of feel like it's this insincerity, and I think I'm just projecting maybe instances where I felt like the cases where I may have known someone who was insincere, I'm projecting that onto Oscar Wilde. And so it's a very personal reason for not liking it. I just think there are some things that don't suit your certain personality, and this was one of those. They were very funny, but they just made me sad. I was left feeling kind of sad and drained after, reading 4 of them. So that's how I feel. Like I said, in a reading vlog, if I'm reading, it's not that I can't read things that have dishonest people in them, but I like for it to be clear, and there was nobody I cared for in this. Whereas if you're reading Wuthering Heights, it's this thing and it's supposed to be sad. You're supposed to be feeling all the feelings. But when I feel sad during a comedy, it's like I just don't know what to do with it. So overall, not my favorite, unfortunately. Then I read The Princess and the Goblin by George MacDonald with my son Peter, and we both kind of felt so-so about this. Yeah, I do really admire George MacDonald's creativity. It's a really neat premise where there's this little princess who lives in a castle with her family, and there are goblins who live in caves who are plotting to overthrow the king and make the princess marry their prince Harelip. So it's a really clever kind of premise, but it's just the execution of it felt kind of lacking. There's not very much characterization, and Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, who took inspiration from him, he's kind of the father of fantasy. Really, I just enjoyed their books so much more. So I really do appreciate kind of what he did for fantasy, but as far as the execution of it, it was a little bit lacking. But I do want to put a plug here. I did mention briefly in a vlog that I had read The Fisherman's Lady by him, and I've really enjoyed this. This is set in a Scottish shore town, and I love how it starts out where every morning this grandfather, who's one of the main characters, plays the bagpipes, and that's how he wakes up the whole town. It's like his job to be the alarm for the town. And there is a bit of a mystery in here, and there's some really whimsical, scenic writing, and I love one of the main characters in this. When she meets another character in it, she is found reading The Fairy Queen on the beach. So just some really whimsical elements to this. It's this really little town. Like I said, there's some mystery and intrigue. By the end of it, I wasn't super amazed, but I really enjoyed the whole process. So I definitely want to investigate more George MacDonald. He wrote so many adult novels in addition to the fantasy and the the children's books that he wrote. There's a sequel to this, and also it's confusing because there's another title for this, The Fisherman's Lady, and the sequel I think is called Malcolm. The main character is Malcolm, but there's also different titles, so it's a little hard to find it on Goodreads, so you might have to do some Googling to figure out because the titles were changed at different times. Okay, then I read Olive with Natalie from My Reading Days. And unfortunately, this was a case of the author's writing style just not really grooving with her writing style. And it's frustrating to me because I can't put my finger on it, what I didn't like about it. I can't tell you, oh, there was this, this, and this. I don't know what it was. It was a real puzzle to me. And the kind of general layout of the story is really neat. It does, as Katie from Books and Things said, it starts out like Jane Eyre, and it kind of turns a lot of the Victorian tropes on their head, and I appreciated the originality of the story, but I can't tell you what it is. So that was kind of a frustrating experience, especially because Natalie really connected with the story a lot more. So I think it really was, don't let, my lack of enjoyment at all put you off the story. Something about it just wasn't a hit with me. All right. Then one that, the further I get into this, the less I like it, unfortunately. So this is one I actually have not finished yet. I am on page 547 out of 730. So if something changes between now and when I finish it, less than 200 pages from now, I will do an update video. But as far as I can tell, this is at most going to be 3 stars. I don't know how many of you know this, but Margaret Mitchell wrote an antebellum retelling of Vanity Fair called Gone with the Wind. I have read Gone with the Wind twice. I love that book so much. So much. I sobbed like a baby the last time I reread it a couple summers ago. It has such a special place in my heart. And there is, Becky Sharp is the main character in this, and Scarlett O'Hara is the Gone with the Wind version. And then Rawdon Crawley, the version of him in Gone with the Wind is Rhett Butler. And then Ashley, which this is so frustrating. I can't remember Ashley's last name, but his counterpart is George Osborne. And then Amelia Sedley, Becky's frenemy, is the version of her in Gone with the Wind is Melanie. And Wilkes, Ashley Wilkes, Melanie Wilkes. And I care so much more about the characters in Gone with the Wind than I do about the characters in Vanity Fair. They jump off the page. They feel so alive in Gone with the Wind. And also certain characters who are slaves in Gone with the Wind, and their personalities are just larger than life, and they feel a really integral part of the story. Whereas the servants in this, they aren't a big, huge part of the story. And so I feel like I just connect so much more with Gone with the Wind. And I'm definitely going to finish this because I want to finish it. So then I will give myself permission to watch the miniseries. It'll be cool to say that I read it because, I love Victorian literature so much, and this is such an iconic novel. But unfortunately, at this point, I'll just be glad to be done. So I'm really disappointed because it is so iconic, and there are a lot of iconic Victorian novels that I love, North and South, Jane Eyre, David Copperfield, Great Expectations. Those are ones that I really love. Wuthering Heights. But I guess you can't love everything. So unfortunately, the more I go through this, the less I like it. It was kind of feeling like 4 stars, and then once I hit the halfway mark, it's steadily, my enjoyment has steadily decreased. So I know there are people out there that really love this. It's one of my aunt's favorite books. But for me, since I've read Gone with the Wind, I think I have that bias. So I'll never be able to know. Had I not read Gone with the Wind before reading this, would I have loved it more? I just don't know. I'm not sure. Okay, then a book that will be a very fond memory because of the buddy read that I did. So this is Hard Times by Charles Dickens. And this, I seem to, with Dickens, either be like, oh my goodness, I loved it so much, or like, just kind of so-so about them. I don't have any books, I don't know if I have any 4-star reads from Dickens. They're either 3-star or 5 stars. except for Nicholas Nickleby, which got 2 stars out of me. But Tom Reads Things, I read this with him, and he loves Nicholas Nickleby. So at some point, I may try to reread it. It could have been possible that the audiobook narrator I didn't like. I tried listening to Hard Times in audiobook format in August, I think it was, and I just could not pay attention and focus. So I was like, you know what? I need to just bite the bullet and read the physical copy of it. Okay, Hard Times. It started out with a lot of potential. I was really impressed. I thought the female characters in it were really interesting and didn't just kind of blend in with a lot of his more one-dimensional female characters. But the ending didn't deliver kind of how I was hoping. And I think Tom kind of felt the same way. So this ended up being 3 stars. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I thought I was going to kind of dread picking it up every day, but I think just discussing it with Tom made it really fun. And it was hovering between 3 and 4 stars. And if the ending had just been longer and I felt like things were wrapped up too quickly, I don't mind a neat, happy ending. That's what I expect from Dickens, but it was that certain things I felt like we needed more details on. So that's kind of my experience reading Hard Times. So now we're moving up to books that are all new favorites. The enjoyment level is going up, and I have very positive feelings about my Victober experience this year. So don't worry, it is not all negative. The next one I want to talk about is The Burglary by Amy Dilwyn. This was a lovely, lovely surprise. I had actually not included this on my TBR this year because I thought I wouldn't have time, but then I had 2 DNFs during the month. And so I thought, you know what? I bought this book 2 years ago. I really want to get to this. And this was a lovely, lovely treat. I gave this 4 stars. It's about this little Welsh community. And in the very beginning, as the title says, there is a burglary. And very soon into the novel, you know who the burglar is. You start getting in their head. You know their motivations. And so it's really interesting to see this person out and about in the community and interacting with other characters and waiting to see if the other characters are going to figure it out. The main character in this of Imogen, I loved her so much. She reminded me a bit of Jo March, Caddy Woodlawn, and then, oh man, I can't remember who the other character that I compared her to. But anyhow, I really, really liked her. The only reason this only got 4 stars is that once it came to the end, I thought, I'm not unhappy with the ending, but I don't know, what different I wanted from it, but it just didn't have that like X factor to kick it up to 5 stars. And I do know, one possibility is that these really interesting parts with Imogen in it, in the last volume of the book, the last section of the book, I felt like you didn't get to see quite as much time with her, and I wanted a bit more time with Imogen to totally feel satisfied. But I definitely recommend this. This is extremely readable. Victorian classics do not have to be scary, and I highly recommend this one as one for beginners. And yeah, I just flew through this. It was really fun, really enjoyable. Now I can finally say I made it successfully through poetry that I was hoping to get through during Victober, and that is The Goblin Market and Other Poems by Christina Rossetti. And I want to read 2 poems to you. I really, really enjoyed this. I usually feel fairly confused when I'm reading poetry, if I'm honest. So there were some poems that I definitely felt confused, why isn't she giving more detail? Who is she talking about? Sometimes I feel that when you read poetry, you feel like you've walked into a room halfway into a conversation. And so it's hard to pick up and follow it because the details are a lot more sparse than novels or even short stories. But overall, this felt a lot more approachable than other poetry that I've tried to read. So this first one is called Twilight Calm. And it says, "Oh, pleasant eventide, clouds on the western side grow gray and grayer, hiding the warm sun. The bees and birds, their happy labors done, seek their close nests and bide. Screened in the leafy wood, the stock doves sit and brood. The very squirrel leaps from bough to bough, but lazily pauses and settles now. Where once he stored his food, one by one the flowers close, lily and dewy rose, shutting their tender petals from the moon. The grasshoppers are still, but not so soon. Are still the noisy crows. The dormouse squats and eats choice little dainty bits beneath the spreading roots of a broad lime. Nibbling his fill, he stops from time to time and listens where he sits. From far the lowings come of cattle driven home. From farther still the wind brings fitfully the vast continual murmur of the sea, now loud, now almost dumb. The gnats whirl in the air, the evening gnats, and there the owl opes broad his eyes and wings to sail. For prey the bat wakes, and the shell-less snail comes forth clammy and bare. Hark! That's the nightingale, telling the self-same tale, her song told when this ancient earth was young. So echoes answered when her song was sung in the first wooded vale. We call it love and pain, the passion of her strain, and yet we little understand or know. Why should it not be rather joy that so throbs in each throbbing vein? In separate herds and deer lie here the bucks and here the does, and by its mother sleeps the fawn. Through all the hours of night until the dawn, they sleep, forgetting fear. The hare sleeps where it lies, with wary, half-closed eyes. The cock has ceased to crow, the hen to cluck. Only the fox is out, some heedless duck or chicken to surprise. Remote each single star comes out till there they are, all shining brightly, how the dews fall damp, while close at hand the glowworm lights her lamp, or twinkles from afar. But everything now is done as much as if the sun, day-giving, had arisen in the east. For night has come, and the great calm has ceased. The quiet sands have run. So beautiful and just so evocative of that time of day. And then a portion of the poetry collection that I really enjoyed were called the devotional pieces, so her religious poetry. And she takes a concept that I think is from Isaiah called the bruised reed, and it's just a really beautiful poem called A Bruised Reed Shall He Not Break. I will accept thy will to do and be, thy hatred and intolerance of sin, thy will at least to love that burns within and thirsteth after me. So will I render fruitful, blessing still, the germs and small beginnings in thy heart, because thy will cleaves to the better part. Alas, I cannot will. Dost not thou will, poor soul? Yet I receive the inner unseen longings of the soul. I guide them turning towards me. I control and charm hearts till they grieve. If thou desire it, yet shall come to pass. Though thou but wish indeed to choose my love, for I have power in earth and heaven above, I cannot wish, alas. What, neither choose nor wish to choose? And yet I still must strive to win thee and constrain. For thee I hung upon the cross in pain. How then can I forget? If thou as yet dost neither love nor hate, nor choose nor wish, resign thyself, be still, till I infuse love, hatred, longing, will. I do not deprecate. This was a really beautiful collection. I'm really happy that I read it. And at some point, I know I will definitely be dipping in and out of it again. Then I did a reread of Cranford with Meghan Hanet, and it was a blast revisiting this story. I had kind of forgotten that for the first kind of half of the book, it's a steady 3 stars, and I was getting kind of worried. And then there's things that happen at the end that I'm like, oh yes, this, this really knocks it up to 4 stars. And there were certain things that were just so funny and just so humorous in this. I had just forgotten how enjoyable it is. Yeah. So it really does have some really heartbreaking things, but also some really heartwarming things. And it's just a lovely little Elizabeth Gaskell novel. I mean, she can do no wrong in my book. Okay, then the 3 by far favorites of the month. These are all books that I'm like, I can't wait to reread these. And they are all equal. So these are all equal 5-star reads. And I'm so excited. I had 3 5-star reads in this month. You have no guarantees when you make a TBR, whether you're going to like something or not. The first is Grania by Emily Lawless. Victoria's Secret Publishers sent this to me last year, and I'm so grateful to them. Also, this edition has so much supplemental material. I think around 100 additional pages. So many appendices. There is, let's see, reviews and early responses. So, what people thought of it then. Essays, poems, and letters by Emily Lawless. And then let's see here. What else is there? The Aran Islands and the west of Ireland, kind of telling you more about the area. What on marriage at the time. Motherhood, the Debate, and the Humanitarian. All these interesting articles that kind of apply. And it was just, so it's a very well put together collection. Oh, and there's an introduction and notes by Michael O'Flynn. So I definitely want to read the introduction since I loved it so much, but didn't want to be spoiled, so didn't read it prior to reading Grania. This was an astoundingly beautiful novel. The landscape is just such a huge part of the story. It was, the language that Emily Lawless uses was breathtakingly beautiful. I was so impressed that she was so precise with what she did with this story, and it's very short. I think it's 250 pages, and at the end I thought, well, boy, that was kind of abrupt, but then the more I think about it, the more fitting that it seems how it ends. It ended how it did. It really packs a punch. I cannot recommend this highly enough. I love this so much. You start out, you're following Grania, who grows up on one of the Aran Islands, and it's just this really unique landscape that is such a core part of the people's lives. I feel in some stories, people feel a lot more separated from where they live, but this was such an integral part of the storyline. And yeah, it's just so beautifully written. It is not this happy-go-lucky book. It's so worth your time. So I highly recommend it. And yeah, I definitely recommend this. Next is Adam Bede by George Eliot. This book really slowly but surely made me fall in love with it. George Eliot, this just like bumped her way up into my top authors. I think before this, I definitely would have said she was in my top 10, but now I'm like, is she right underneath Elizabeth Gaskell? I don't know. I've had just she's a very acquired taste for me, and I really think so many people start her with Middlemarch, and I think that's an intermediate Victorian novel, and I was I felt very like off-put by trying to read Middlemarch. And I really, it really set me back in my love for George Eliot. The next one I read was Daniel Deronda, and that seemed miles more approachable. The Mill on the Floss, I read next, and unfortunately did not like it that much. But now, since I loved Adam Bede so much, once I get through her catalog, I will be rereading The Mill on the Floss, because I thought maybe I wasn't ready for it then. It's possible, you know, there's some authors you just don't love everything by them, but it made me definitely want to reconsider it. But Adam Bede, it starts out, it slowly pulls you in and gives you a real context for these characters. You get to know them, their lives, where they're living, the issues they're dealing with, and then really things really speed up about halfway through. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful novel. It has some really interesting, hard issues in it. And I highly recommend this. If you have not read George Eliot, starting with this one, truly. It does have some of the slower feeling that George Eliot's novels can have, really dense, heavy commentary on life, but it seems a lot more approachable than Middlemarch did. I can't recommend this enough. It kind of has this love, I think I heard Mel say love quadrangle or something, and it's very complicated, interwoven relationships, but really, really good. So good. So happy I read it. And it was a really, really lovely way to experience it via audiobook while knitting. Did not manage to quite finish my knit and listen project, but I have made quite a lot of progress. I'll show you. So there's one whole sleeve that's done, and then I am working my way through the other sleeve. And so after I finish this sleeve, I'll just be weaving in all the ends. So I will make sure to wear it in another video. My hope was that I could wear this for my Victober wrap up, but I wanted to have my Victober wrap up early in the month, because I knew I wasn't going to finish Vanity Fair in time. So I'm like, I'm not going to hold up for Vanity Fair just to do the wrap up. And like I said, if my feelings about Vanity Fair for some reason change, I'll do an update video, but I will wear that sweater at some point to show you all how it turned out. And then my last favorite 5-star read of the month was The Doctor's Wife by Mary Elizabeth Braddon. Yay! When I first read Lady Audley's Secret, I thought, I want to read everything by this woman. And then last year when I read The Trail of the Serpent, I thought, do I really though? Do I? And now I'm confirmed again. Yes, I do. And I heard this was her favorite of her novels. There's a really lengthy introduction in this, so I'll be really curious. And now this has kind of made me think, should I read Madame Bovary? Because this is her kind of spoof of Madame Bovary. I read this with Kate from the novel Nomad, and we had so much fun discussing this, and then at the end just kind of gushing. It has so many ups and downs. You know, it is a sensation novel. It's a really intelligent sensation novel with a lot of social commentary, with some really great characterization. You know, you can kind of, you look on the back and it's going to tell you probably more than you want to know. You can kind of tell from the title, The Doctor's Wife, and the painting they selected with it that it's possible this wife isn't quite 100% thrilled with her marriage. And even though it was, you know, I don't know, it's kind of interesting to be maybe not 100% thrilled with your protagonist throughout the story, but still really invested and wanting to know what's going to happen. And I just think that shows Mary Elizabeth Braddon's skill as an author. It's also really fun because there's a character in here who's a sensation novelist, and you hear him giving like, oh, you know, if I had written The Vicar of Wakefield, here's how I would have written it, and kind of turning it into a sensation novel. So I think she did kind of agonize sometimes over not being taken more seriously as an author. And, you know, even if you write sensation novels, you can still have really beautiful literary writing in a really plot-heavy book. So that does make me sad. She felt she wasn't given kind of the credit that she was due. And the woman wrote so many books. So definitely has spurred me on to want to read more by her, and I'll definitely reread this at some point. It was an utter delight, so approachable. I highly recommend this. That is my Victober wrap-up. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed Victober. Thank you for leaving so many lovely comments. And like I said, hopefully this year, I'll keep a steady flow of Victorian literature throughout the year and not just feeling overwhelmed with everything that I pick in next Victober. So thank you for watching, and I'll be back for another video soon.